If the name of the Savior is precious to you, His care has been constant and tender and true. If the light of His presence has brightened your way, oh, will you not tell of your gladness today? Oh, will you not tell it, unveil it today? Will you not tell it, unveil it today? If the light of His presence has brightened your way, oh, will you not tell it today? If your faith in the Savior has brought its reward, if the strength you have found in the strength of your Lord, if the hope of all rest in His Sabbath is sweet, oh, will you not, brother, the story repeat? Oh, will you not tell it, not tell it today? Will you not tell it, not tell it today? If the light of His presence has brightened your way, oh, will you not tell it today? If the souls all around you are living in sin, if the Master has told you to bid them come in, if the sweet invitation they never have heard, oh, will you not tell them the cheering word? Oh, will you not tell it, not tell it today? Will you not tell it, not tell it today? If the light of His presence has brightened your way, oh, will you not tell it today? 624. 624 after this. Seeking the lost, yes, and in reading, wanderers on the mountain astray. Come to me, words of the Master, speaking today. Going up on the mountain, bringing the wonder back again into the fold of my Redeemer, Jesus the Lamb, for sinners slain. Seeking the lost and pointing to Jesus, souls that are weak and hearts that are sore, leading them forth in ways of salvation, showing the path to life. Going up above the mountain, bringing the wonder back again into the fold of my Redeemer, Jesus the Lamb, for sinners slain. Thus I would go on missions of mercy, following Christ from day unto day, hearing the faint and raising the fallen, pointing the lost to Jesus the way, going up on the mountain, bringing the wonder back again into the fold of my Redeemer, Jesus the Lamb, for sinners slain. Song after the list will be page 905.
Thank you for that song, Mike. That's one of my favorite songs. I remember hearing that first time when I was about knee-high to a duck. Y'all know what that means? Go to Tennessee and ask. Okay. So, elders and their qualifications. Let's think about this for a moment. Y'all notice that verse I got up there? What does that have to do with elders? Everything. It has everything to do with elders. It has everything to do with a Christian. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. That is in the middle of Colossians chapter 3. It's actually a division statement, and it applies to everything written before it, and it applies to everything written after it. It applies to everything in the scriptures. There's nothing it doesn't apply to. And our thought is everything has to be done, whether it's said or done, by the authority of Jesus Christ. So when we start looking at some things, whether we like it or not, to borrow a human phrase, it is what it is. What God says is what God says. So I kind of want to take that as our thought as we look at things and try to deal with them. I want to look at two things in reconciling the scriptures. I want to look at a couple of things before we actually get into qualifications. One is the question that came up, and we'll be looking at it a little further. Why are there two different lists? We need to understand the point that there is a writing to Timothy and there is a writing to Titus, and they're two different circumstances. You go into 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 14 to 15. Paul says, "These things I write to you, though I hope to come to you shortly. But if I am delayed, I write so that you may know how you ought to conduct yourself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and the ground of the truth." This part is written right after the qualifications, elders, deacons, and both their wives. Okay? So what Paul is saying is, I'm writing this so you know what to do. I'm not there with you. I'm writing this so you know how to behave. You go to Titus chapter 1, verse 5. "For this reason I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are lacking and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you." What tense is commanded? Past tense. What does that tell us about when Paul sent Titus to Crete or left him in Crete? He had already talked to him and said, "I'm leaving you here to appoint elders." So how much would he have discussed about the appointment of elders in that phrase, in that time frame? Huh? Everything. Pretty much would have told him everything he needed to know. I want to take two things offside. I want us to understand this. At the end of Acts chapter 19, after Apollos leaves Ephesus and goes to Corinth, it said that he spoke mightily and reasoned with the Jews. What's that? Reasoned with the Jews that Jesus was the Christ from the scriptures. That means he brought a conclusion forward. No written word of the New Testament, but all the evidence that had been brought forth. We are to reason about things. And it's reasonable to conclude that purpose in writing to Titus is really you're not getting the job done. You know why I left you there. And now I'm writing you because to remind you why I left you there. You remind somebody, you tell them the whole list? Not necessarily. So we're going to look at that point. or we'll look. How about 1 Timothy 2, verses 12 through 15? Do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man, but to be in silence. For Adam was formed first, and then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived fell in transgression. Nevertheless, she will be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith, love, holiness, with self-control. Is that a literal list of what every woman has to do to be saved? Why not? Doesn't say anything about baptism. Okay, aside from baptism.
Not all women will have children.
Not all women have children. Therefore, to be a mother, those women must have children, right? To be a mother. But does she have to be a mother to be a Christian? Does she have to be a mother to be an elder? Excuse me. I understand. Believe me, that was my brain took a left turn. Well, I thought elder's wife too. My point was, does she have to be a mother to go to heaven? No. Okay. Let's think about this with the list concerning elders. Does a man have to be an elder, period, to be a Christian? Does he have to be an elder to go to heaven? Does he have to be an elder to serve God? So the qualifications just simply says what a man has to do to be an elder, the same as a woman has to have children to be a child or to be a mother. Well, I'm going all over the place tonight. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. This is what the first two verses say of 1 Timothy 3. This is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach. Which of those would not apply? No, I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about, we don't see a problem with this, right? This is what God had Paul write down through the Holy Spirit.
You underline must be.
I underline must be. What does must be make it?
Imperative.
Imperative. What else does it make it? I'm looking for a secular thing. A requirement. It's not a choice. So let's do a comparison between the two, 1 Timothy and Titus. So we stop there. Blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, good behavior, hospitable, able to teach. Blameless, the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of dissipation or insubordinate. Anything different there? Only the mention of children, okay? Hold on to that thought. Not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous. Over on tithe, for a bishop must be blameless as a steward of God, not self-willed, not quick-tempered. Seem to be going kind of hand in hand, maybe a little different order, right?
Timothy goes.
Not quarrelsome, not quick-tempered, huh?
Timothy goes into detail of what they should not be blamed about.
Well, yeah, Timothy goes a little bit more detail, but I'm talking about in a general list, because this is what we're doing. We're just comparing the two. Huh? The bullet points are the same. These are actually verse by verse in order. Notice the first tip. One who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. With a side note, for if a man does not know how to rule his own house, we'll go that other, okay, in a moment. Not given to wine, not violent, not greedy, not for money, but hospitable, a lover of what is good, sober-minded, just, holy, self-controlled. The side note that Paul makes for if he cannot rule over his own house well, how will he take care of the church of God? This is his ultimate responsibility. If he can't take care of his own house, how is he going to take care of the church? If there's not evidence, how do you know? No, holding fast the faithful word has been taught that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort, convict those who contradict. On the other side, not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride, he fall in the same condemnation as the devil. Have we really seen anything different between the two lists? The two sets of scriptures? Moreover, he must have a good testimony above those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Two warnings in Timothy that aren't given in Titus. The novice and having a good reputation outside. And both of those, the novice is lest he be puffed up with pride, fall in the same condemnation as the devil. Kind of gives a little insight on what happened to the devil, isn't it? Puffed up with pride. And that point of good, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. So in comparison, we really don't find much difference. Maybe the wording, but all the qualifications are still there. So let's go this point. Here is why I put up Colossians 3:17 under this heading, recognizing God's will. 2 Timothy 3:16, verse 17. All scripture is given by the inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, thoroughly equipped for every good work. Of the things we read in verse 16 and even 17, how many of them would apply to the qualifications of elders, deacons, and their wives? It is given by the inspiration of God. It's profitable for doctrine. It's profitable for reproof, for correction, and above all, and in all, instruction in righteousness. It's good for every Christian, but my point is taking this and applying it to the qualifications for elders. Here comes a reality. Whatever we look into needs to be able to fit in that and be right before God. Otherwise, we become incomplete. When we start changing the will of God, we become incomplete. So let's start going through the qualifications. This faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. Is that a qualification? Or a requirement to be an elder?
Well, let me say this. I don't see it as a qualification as much as it is to be clear, because when you go to pick someone to be an elder, we have to understand, okay, he says he wants to do a good work, but what is his real motive? He might not even know his real motive.
He may not.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on that. But the point of the idea that if he doesn't have a desire to do it,
Yes, I agree with that 100%. I'm just wanting to add something to make it
I
even more.
I understand, because he needs to understand what he's doing too.
Exactly.
All that needs to be the idea. That's why we've laid all the groundwork over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
In fact, last week we did responsibilities of the church to the elders. Before we did responsibilities of the elders, because that's important. Because if a man doesn't understand what his responsibility in is, and he's going to be held accountable for God, he may be getting into something he don't really want.
Per the Bible, it doesn't say it's a qualification to begin.
No, it doesn't say it.
But it is necessary.
Yeah, he makes the statement, and I think we overlook that because it doesn't necessarily say he must be. It's not part of that must be phrase, but it does point out that he has to have a desire.
It's like a mission statement.
Okay, that's the bishop mission statement. All right, we'll make it that way. Michelle said it. Okay? Then we get into this. Bishop then must be blameless. What does blameless mean?
But it doesn't mean sinless, that's for sure.
Does not mean sinless. Okay.
That Greek word gives a sense of how to handle somebody have, when you grab a hold of him or something, if there's something in his life that you can let the devil get a hand.
That would be a point. And that would be a good example, something that the devil can't get a hold of him with. Yeah, nothing to be accused of. It's talking about his character and the way he handles himself and conducts himself, and he strives to be right with the Lord. That's where it really comes back to. When it's talking about blameless, it's talking about with the Lord. It's not that he don't ever make a mistake, he don't ever sin. It's just that he's out there living in sin.
Or above or beyond reproach.
Yeah, beyond reproach is what they actually look at. And here's a reality. And y'all should have figured out by now, I like that word reality.
You know what Paul thinks?
You know what Paul thinks? You can accuse somebody of anything. It doesn't have to be true. What this is talking about is he's of a character that nobody would even listen to it. You'd have to have some serious evidence. Nothing that he can actually really be accused of. Okay, next one, husband and one wife. Huh? Well, that's all it says is a husband, one wife. One wife. Those things come in. Those things come into play. How much, huh?
All right, so does the bishop have to be married?
Well, husband of one wife
Must be.
means he must. Let me point this.
So can a single unmarried man who's never been married be a bishop?
No. And we'll explain why in a few minutes. Okay, so that is the point. The realization of the time was that there were men who had multiple wives in the Roman culture. Okay? To a degree, that is what Paul is trying to address, but he's also trying to address God's will for marriage. So here's the husband and wife. If he's widowed and remarried, how many wives does he have? One at the time. What is if he's scripturally divorced and remarried?
Not if she burned the biscuits.
Not if she does. I said scripturally divorced. That's not scripturally divorced. Huh?
If she's alive, you still won't marry twice.
If she's alive, he still has two wives, but if she's dead, he only has one.
I mean, you're still married. I mean,
So if she dies, is he still able to be?
yeah, then that's it.
Well, here's the thing we got to realize, and you don't have to play with that. I'm moving back over here.
To follow God's law of marriage.
We have to be willing to follow God's law of marriage, and it has to be satisfied. Here comes the thing that we don't always think about, and we have to think about it. when you go into this defining husband and one wife, you have different people defined different ways that would actually could fit the Bible. Here's the thing, if he's scripturally married after being divorced, he is the husband of one wife. So here comes the question. What is the congregation going to accept? What do they want? That's important. Here comes, I'll throw you one out there, and it's not to throw anything at anyone. But everybody knows my situation. I have to do it. I have to have it out there. There were churches that would not hire me because of my situation. There were those that were here and did not think I should have been hired. But their mind has since changed as far as me, and I appreciate their candor and being honest with me, and I'm not going to call any names or anything. But here what we come down to is, if the church is not willing to accept a preacher who's been divorced and scripturally remarried, what does that preacher have to do? We kind of hit on that last week to a degree about submission.
Well, if he's not, if it's something that's hindering edification, it's probably not the best thing.
Well, and that's the point. Do the eldership have the right to say this is better for edification and not to have it?
Best decision, pride is
For that congregation, right. And that's my point. If they chose me not to hire me, what do? I have to accept it, and I go to the next one. Okay? Well, what if the church says husband of one wife is one wife, period? What if they make that definition for the elder? Huh? And they think what's best for the church is one wife, period. What do? We have to accept it. Okay? Now, the other question comes in, can they have a living wife? Is it living wife or one wife, period?
I believe the contract states that be part.
Okay, well, he would be free to remarry. But does that contract in the appointment of elders? Here's the thing we have to realize, and we have to think about this. At the time of his appointment, was he a husband of one wife?
I think that's the way to look at it. Because you're looking for, is he suitable for these causes?
Right.
And if he meets these causes, and we know that death is amongst us all the time, and if someone loses their spouse, I don't believe that disqualifies them from meeting this list. Now, it will come back to what you were just talking about. How does the congregation?
There we go. It does. It comes back how the congregation.
If it is, then it's a bad idea.
Right. If it's disruptive, then we have to. But what we do have to consider is, at the time of the qualification, did he meet the qualifications, and did the wife meet the qualifications?
That's what you're looking for at the time of the selection.
Yes. Okay. Now, that would be different if she's already deceased and his name comes up to be an elder. Because then, let's explain this. And in my mind, here's what disqualifies him if he comes up to be an elder. How does the wife meet those qualifications if she's deceased? There you go. So at the time of appointment, he would not be the husband of one wife, and neither would that wife be able, even if he said, I've only ever been married once. Okay? So literally, okay? There. Any questions on that?
I keep thinking about that verse about where whose husband will he be in the next world.
Doesn't apply.
Okay. It just keeps
Huh?
coming.
If we're gonna use that at the time of appointment for that particular category, do we have to assume that we sober-minded and was good.
Well,
But if he lost that over the years and no longer. he's
Well,
qualified.
let's do this. And here's my thought on this. Physical versus spiritual. Are there some qualifications that are physical circumstance?
Yeah,
Husband and wife, children, all those fall under a physical circumstance. What about these others? Temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach.
Able to teach could be physical.
Yeah, it's partly physical, but what is it also?
Spiritual.
All the rest of these are spiritual. If he loses his spiritual reputation, can he remain? Should he be approached? Should he been talked to? In fact, if we go back to 1 Timothy, and actually I have 2 Timothy up here, it's 1 Timothy 3. I think around, I want to say chapter 2, but it might be chapter 4. The elder who sins, let him be rebuked before all. If it comes to a point that an elder's been talked to about something that's sinful in his life and he's not corrected to the point he has rebuke from the church, I would be the first to say that he would need to be asked to be resigned, to resign. One could make the argument that if the wife dies, he's no longer qualified. I'm going to make this like this. I'm not going to take any more questions on it. The argument could be made, but again, it's going to be according to what the church is willing to accept, whether that argument holds water. Because here comes the reality. We have what it takes for a man to qualify and be appointed as an elder. Where does it tell us how to remove an elder? It's going to come down to the judgment of the membership.
Rebuking a person that continues
To sin,
rebuking him once, rebuking twice, and that.
do with him. That falls under that. But Timothy, we talked about this last week, talks about before rebuke the elder who sent not to receive an accusation against the elder except for by 2 or 3 witnesses, and the one that sins rebuke before all. That doesn't bypass Matthew 18. It's the end result of Matthew 18. And remember, there's a clause there afterwards that says that all may fear. Wow. We pointed that out last week. If an elder isn't repenting and gets rebuked before the entire church, what can happen to little old me? That's the end result of Matthew 18, not the beginning.
In 3 John, it doesn't appear that they were able to remove
Diotrephes?
Diotrephes. It sounded like John was going to do it when he got there, but he didn't tell Gaius to do it.
No, he didn't tell Gaius to do it. And honestly, there have been writings to Diotrephes or messages sent to Diotrephes because it even says that he refuses to hear us. So when I arrive, I'll deal with it. The old man apostle is going to rebuke him for everyone. And he's going to do exactly what Paul told Timothy.
Because the scripture shouldn't be left up to the congregation to vote on.
I'm not saying they are, but here comes the point. If you're going to go that a husband and one wife, then your only other option is husband, one wife, period. He gets married at 19, they're in a car wreck and she gets killed. At 30, he marries again, has children, they raise them up in the home. And he's teaching in the church, he's been a deacon in the church. Are you going to disqualify him as a deacon?
You have to consider, if he gets remarried, it's very important that it's considered, okay, who is this one he's marrying? What is the character? Could it hinder the church?
And this is my point, because if we take an absolute, we have to go back to every scenario, including that 19-year-old kid that got married.
Are we supposed to use our ability to reason to figure these things out?
There we are. It's not just voting on the qualification, it's reasoning to a point of the edification of the church. Most likely, but the elders have to consider what the church will accept. Is it good for the church? Here's the question. If the elders just make a blanket decision without considering the elders, do they not fall into 1 Peter 5, lording it over? If the elders ever take the attitude and they can't, here's the thing that we have to understand. Baptism, can the elder change baptism? Can they change the way someone's baptized? That is absolute doctrine. That they can change location. And the temperature of the water. You can bring up those, but can they? And that's not lording it over the church. That's just defining what God has already defined.
And we have to remember, the church is the bride of Christ. And so it can't be lorded over.
It can't. Only the Lord gets to say this is absolute. And when he doesn't define it absolutely for us, then it falls under our judgment.
Which comes with the other scripture.
Yeah, which comes with the other scriptures. Personally, though some may say I would qualify to be an elder, I wouldn't want to be an elder. I have no desire to be an elder. I have to explain my marital situation enough without being an elder. I get into that blameless deal, and there's somebody going to go, well, look at him. It's like I had a guy who wanted to be an elder one night when I was going to preach at school at Congregation Deltona, looked at me and he says, I don't believe that there's ever an innocent party in a divorce. If one's guilty, both's guilty. And I just looked at him and I said, I don't believe you should ever be an elder either. And not just for that, other reasons. And he's like, what do you mean? If you're not willing to look at what God says concerning marriage and divorce, what do you have the right to be an elder for? Why should you be an elder? These things we have to understand. There are judgments that we sometimes are going to have to make. And we're going to have to make our best judgment. Okay?
And that's the good thing about being an autonomous congregation, because you do not tell your reverend how many you do.
There we go. That's what it comes down
They
to.
do the same thing.
No. And that's my point. It's what the congregation sees fit. So it might come into, here comes the reality. If you've got 25% of the church going, he's absolutely got to be a husband of one wife, and that means one wife ever, one wife period, guess what you're going to have to do? You're just still not going to let him be a bishop, because that's what the church sees. It would not, here, let's be honest, 25% of the membership is not going to follow him as an elder.
And the church has to always come first.
The church has come first. Yes, sir.
All of the elders agree that on the definition of that, even if there's people in the congregation who don't doesn't the fact that we have to submit to the decision of our elders come into play in that? We may
The
not
submitting to the elders
disagree
come-
with every decision that they make, but we have to be in submission. We put ourselves when we become a member of the local church
Well,
in submission to the elders' decisions.
and again, I agree with that. We have to be in submission to their decisions.
So we think
Well,
it's
but
qualified.
wait a minute. The elders can't just make a bilateral decision and say, we don't care about what the congregation thinks in that 25%. Well, yeah,
But that's why I said, does it come down to a vote? We got 25 people that are agree with it and 27 people that don't. Now we gotta make a judgment.
yeah, and we gotta make a judgment that's for the benefit of the whole church. Here's the idea, here's the thing that you're bringing up, and I want you to understand something. 25% said, we can't follow this man if you make him an elder. Right? You've got this definition, this is the only one, you've got 27 like, well, we see it that way and we see it that way. Which one's gonna split the church, most likely?
Well, I'm wondering about the other 48 that you hadn't brought up.
Well, he said 25, 27, this is 25 members, 27, that's the way he put it. So you got half the church that says it's this way, half the church says it's both ways. No, most of the people that said it can be either way, if we say for the benefit of the church, we're not going to appoint him as an elder. And I'm gonna be honest, if I was that guy wanting to be an elder and everybody, I got 25 people saying we don't think you should be an elder, I'm gonna tell them real quick, drop it.
Amen. That's what he would do.
You're gonna split the congregation when they lose.
What did you say?
I said amen to.
No, a few minutes ago, you said something.
48.
No, before they get to 48, back
Oh,
up.
the congregation is first.
The congregation is first. What is best for the congregation has to come first, as long as it's not changing doctrine.
So then it would fall into the realm of somewhat of an expediency.
To leave it alone.
That word comes in too.
Yeah.
That person being considered with this questionable qualification as an elder, he'll not make a good elder if he doesn't consider the 25 you're talking about. He won't make a good one.
Yeah. That's what it comes down to.
His,
It's not really a vote, it's a consideration of how people feel.
And if it will continue to be built up because of that.
Yeah, because will it edify or will it tear down? We kind of went through some of this stuff while you were on vacation. So, about those thoughts. So let's move on. What does temperate mean?
controls his himself.
He's in self-control. We read that he's able to control. He doesn't lose his temper really easy. As James would say, he's not quick tempered. Controls himself. Sober-minded. Clear thinking, huh? Common sense. Thoughtful. He's got a mindset that is realistic with the scriptures. His time is always about being right with God.
And understanding reality outside of scriptures also.
Yeah, and that comes back. That point is sober-minded. I want to be of a good reputation. I want to see people as somebody that they can come to and talk to. Good behavior. I didn't. But he knows what, but it's that point. He is somebody, he is a good citizen and a good member of the church. Hospitable. Approachable. Welcoming. Generous.
Willing to
Think about-
go into your home.
Welcome people in your home. How about Matthew 25? How much does that fit in there? All those things that Jesus said that the sheep did. Visiting the sick, clothing the naked, housing the homeless, or welcoming people in their home when necessary. All those types of things. Visiting those in prison. Does that not fall under hospitable? Caring for people. That's literally what hospitable means. Caring for people. I'm going to throw somebody out there that you probably would never think about looking at this definition, and they fit it perfectly. Lot. Lot was hospitable. Lot was actually out at the gates of the city looking for strangers who came in to bring them into his house under his protection when the angels came to destroy Sodom. He's very hospitable. Able to teach. What is that able to teach? I like that point in Titus. What is able to teach?
Has to have the understanding of the scriptures so that he can relate it to the congregation.
Not only does he have to have the understanding, he has to have ability to present it.
To a
Okay.
reasonable degree.
Huh?
To a reasonable degree.
To a reasonable degree. Here's what Timothy,
Wisdom and maturity.
yeah, it takes that wisdom and maturity. It takes those things. Notice this, holding fast the faithful word as he has been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and convict those who contradict. Not only is he able to teach, he's able to withstand those who would teach contrary to the word of God. That means he's got to have a good knowledge, and he's willing to stand up for it. Here's a question before we go too further. How do you know he's able to teach if he's never taught? So he should be someone who's already been teaching, because then you see he has both a knowledge and ability.
You want somebody to drive a chemical truck who's never drove a chemical truck.
You don't want somebody driving a chemical truck that's never driven a truck, period.
Somebody would be put out for the role of bishop if he had already proven the fact that he was knowledgeable and able to teach and understanding person in the congregation.
Should not have been. Let me put it that. I would not go as far as would not have been, because I've seen some people that should have never been.
And still, it's not everybody should be allowed to be.
Yeah. And this goes along in that hand. Ron brought up James saying, I would not have many of you to become teachers, knowing that we should receive the greater judgment. There's a higher standard of judgment for a teacher than there is for others. Well, if you think there's a higher standard of judgment for teachers, what happened to preachers? Steps up. What happens to elders? Which
With each level of responsibility.
greater the judgment.
Judgment,
Yeah.
because you're supposed to know more.
You're supposed to know more, and the more you know better. Then, it's like my daddy used to ask us, you don't think I know that you know better than that?
And one thing in living in the process as a bride of Christ, the elders are growing, the preachers are growing, the members are growing. And we consider that also.
Yeah, everything is about growing. And we need to be that point of that we have teachers that are helping us grow. And the reason I brought that up is because I remember a man bringing up Ephesians 4:11, where it says pastors and teachers, that meant only the elders were to be the teachers. And he was the preacher, and I just raised my hand. So you mean you're resigning? Because if they're the only ones that can be teachers, they're the only ones that can be preaching. Because preaching is a form of teaching. And how do you, and I point out, and how do you know a man is able to teach if he never taught? So in order to know he's able to teach, in order to make him an elder, he's had to have taught. So that throws that right out the window. What it does mean is all pastors must be able to teach, but not all teachers have to be pastors. Okay, moving on. Not given to wine. What does that mean, given to wine? A drunkard, a drinker?
Wine's a weakness.
Wine's a weakness. Wine gets a hold of him. It has a hold of him. He's given to it. It's got him. Not violent. Not violent. What does that mean? Some translations, not a brawler.
Self-explanatory, I believe.
That's pretty well it. He's not somebody going around getting in fights. Not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous. Those all pretty well go hand in hand, especially last three. He needs to be a gentle person. That comes back into that temper. He doesn't lose his temper. He has self-control and he's gentle with people. That is part of being approachable. If you can't go to an elder, what good is he as an elder? If you can't go talk to him, what good is it? If he's somebody that says, well, I don't have time for that today, every time you try to go to him, what good is he? And if I can't talk to him reasonably, what good is it going to be? So that comes back, that kind of falls under that lording. If he's not approachable, then he's probably just a lord. And if he's just a lord, then what good is he as an elder?
He's not being Christ-like.
He's not being Christ-like. Because he is Lord, but yet he doesn't treat us as he's Lord.
Cares for you.
He expects us to treat him as Lord, but he does not treat us as a Lord would treat people. Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and finish. One who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. Titus says, having faithful children.
I noticed now, maybe that most elders are elders. As far as age, children are already gone.
Okay.
So is it retroactive?
How were they when they were in his home? What kind of reputation did he have? Did he rule his own house well? And I think sometimes it might be that we, in our thoughts, often want to get men in their 60s and 70s, whereas the reality of this time frame the average life expectancy was around 50 years of age for a man. So most of the elders would have probably been in their late 30s, early 40s, which means most of them, and throw this in there, most children, most men did not leave the home till after 30 years of age. So would that still judge them? Were they in submission? So yes, we have to look at it. We have to look at it as retroactive. We have to look, how did he raise his children? How did they do? Did that, and you got to understand that most times when elders become elders, where are they becoming elders at? Speak up. Where? Oh, that congregation where they brought their children up.
If you want to know about an individual in this situation, just look at his children. You know, I can't say that children always implicate what you are, but they are a really good way to get some insight into the home.
They are.
And there are a lot of people that run around and say, well, you're not supposed to judge. I kind of laugh when I read this.
We're judging everything. And
That's
when,
exactly
all
what
these
God
verses
is
are
doing.
judging right there.
We have to.
And we have to use some kind of reasonable judgment, and we have to look at things, and we have to understand, here comes something we ought to think about along this line. Children can be a product of their raising, or they can be a product in spite of their raising, good and bad.
This is true.
We find that all throughout the scriptures.
But it's a good tool. God is telling us.
It's
this
a
is
good tool to go by.
use.
It is a good tool. And were they in subjection when they ruled? If he was always having problems with his kids, guess what? Something wrong somewhere. Something's hard. And sometimes kids are just on the belly. Here, blow this one out there. How many children? Children is plural. Who said plural? Bray, plural. Okay.
Not necessarily.
Just one.
Wait a minute. Y'all messing me up here. See, I like it when somebody says plural. Ask me how many children I have. Come on, ask me. Biological, adopted, or inherited? Which one you talking about? Huh? I got one biological, one adopted, and 4 inherited.
Plus your congregation.
Y'all ain't my kids. You might be the sheep I feed, but you're not my kids. They're your daddy. Now, if you ask me how many biological children I have, how would I answer that? 1. Plural, children is both plural and singular when it's being used. Okay? Now, here's what makes it easy. Bring up that deal Joey brought. Guy's got 5 kids and got one that's just bad all the time, and the rest are doing what they're supposed to be, being faithful. How do you judge him? Well, he just got one that just rebels, period. 1 out of 5. If he's only got one and he's being bad, how do you judge him? You don't have a whole lot of choice. Now, my father used to believe that it meant multiple of children, and he said it because it gives him dealing with different personalities. And you could argue that point, but do you disqualify a man because he only has one child is out living and preaching and teaching the gospel?
Jacob had 12 sons, and they were all in submission to him, but 10 of them didn't have
10 of them were a headache.
it. Yeah. 10 of them were,
They were in submission, but
but they were all in submission. They did what he said,
they did.
but they weren't all that
No, but he had them under his subjection. It doesn't ask you about their character. Does he have them in submission with all reverence? That's an interesting point. Now, here's the reason. This is the reason for a wife, one wife. This is a reason for children. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? What is having children? Huh? It's done just like a family, and there's evidence that he can treat it just like a family. If there's no children, where's the evidence? Let's get this covered too. Do they have to be biological children?
A child would definitely be someone that belongs to the home that can take responsibility.
Yeah, that you've raised, that you were part of the raising. Okay, because
Earlier when you said to be a mother, you had to have birth that child.
No, I said to be a mother, you had to have children. I didn't say you had to give birth to that child. Because I know a lot of mothers
Yes, they take on.
that never had a child as far as biological, but they took on those children.
You're looking for how he nurtured those children. So he has to have quality time in the home in an age when they can be guided, led,
Molded.
disciplined, molded. And if he doesn't have that, then it's just, you lose this whole way of making a judgment.
There comes a point. Notice that if he does not know how to rule his own house, if they were never part of the house, again, let's go back. Where's your evidence?
Even if they were part of the house, but he didn't really have.
If he didn't have any say of it,
As complete a say as it should. I just know from experience that, yeah, when they're behaving, they're our kids. When they're misbehaving, they're your kids.
that works with kids, dogs, cats, whatever, birds. Yeah. And sometimes it's literally that. It's both our sons, but it's yours right. When he's this way, he's yours.
Now, is that added in, or did you put the parentheses?
Now, the parentheses are in the scriptures.
So they were added in by the people who.
The punctuation was added in by the translators. Because the Greek has no, but it had a way to recognize.
I always thought if it was put parentheses, it was added in later.
No,
No.
no. If it's in italics, it's added in for understanding is what the
Okay.
excuse is. So, but parentheses, no. Parenthetical statements are a part of the scriptures a lot of times. Ephesians 4 would be one of those.
Sometimes they're bracketed.
Yeah, sometimes they're bracketed, sometimes they're print. Yeah,
Manuscripts treated.
yeah. So it comes back to that point. If they weren't raised in the home as his children, let's put it that way, they're not his children for this purpose. For this purpose, okay? And it comes back to this. It comes back to this point because some people, and I remember this was a big problem when the congregation in Kentucky was appointing elders, because there was one man who was the treasurer at the time. They appointed elders. He wasn't going to be able to be an elder because he had no children. Made this argument as a school teacher. He had many children, but none of them were in his home. None of them were raised by him in his home. Yeah. So what it comes back to is, this is what God says. And we have to hold what God says. Okay, yeah, we're gonna actually finish this part. Not a novice. What does that mean?
Not a beginner.
Teresa said, not a beginner, not a new Christian. Experience, okay. So a man moves into a congregation, he's been an elder in another congregation over many states, and he's just been there a month, and you're going to appoint him to an elder. Yes, I already pointed that out, I made that typo. What novice means not new. Not new to being a Christian, not new to a congregation would still fit. You wouldn't have no experience with him. You don't know him. You don't know what he is. You don't know how he is. And suddenly you're going to make him an elder on the word that he was an elder somewhere else. And I bring that up because there was a man, he told us that where he lived previously, and this was in Deltona, whenever an elder moved to another city and went to another congregation in that area, they would automatically make him an elder at that congregation. I looked at him, I said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Now, I've heard dumber since, but it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Because the church doesn't know that man. They don't know how he did. They don't know his family. They don't know how all that came about. So again, there at that point, he's still a novice. He may not be new to the church, but he's new to that congregation. He may not be a new Christian, and that's where this all comes up. Boom, your head can grow. Well, that's the same thing. You got somebody moving. Hey, be an elder. Boom. Oh, these people already respect me. It's the same easy way to fall in condemnation.
You may have older, where you come from, it may be a lot of older people versus somebody coming to a new congregation younger.
Right. They probably haven't even heard you teach. So all these things you have to think about. Moreover, he must be a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into the reproach of and snare of the devil. Mm-hmm. Those outside, huh? Good citizen. Sometimes it's hard for people to have who are not in all the time in the community to have that good testimony, but how easy is it to have a bad testimony? So it might be that you know he doesn't have a bad testimony, so, well, he ain't got a bad one, so people somewhat respect him, but you need to build that as a respectable person. Somebody, at least the people who know you in the area, have a respect for you. Again, that reproach and snare of the devil. One, same condemnation. Those two go hand in hand, believe it or not. That snare and condemnation. Because if you fall into the reproach, the snare of the devil, you're going to get the same condemnation. Those go together. So what we're going to do next week, we're going to stop here and we'll just go back through those ones for Titus, and we'll start getting into the deacons and their qualifications. And I'm thinking, well, I say next week, 2 weeks from tonight. Since we're not out in the potluck next week, we won't be here. So 2 weeks, and we may or may not get into the wives that week. That may just have to be one all by itself. And tie it in with these other things. And that's where we're going to stop. Michael, let's stand and sing.
Yield not to temptation, for yielding to sin. Be Scripture will help you, some others to win. Fight mentally onward, guard passions subdue. Look ever to Jesus, He'll carry you through. Ask the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through.
For those who need to partake of the Lord's Supper, I believe Brother Ron will have it in room 1. If there's nothing else, Brother Joey, will you close?